Baddies ATL recently aired the part 2 of their 2-part reunion, and part 2 definitely had a lot more to watch than part 1. Tamar comes back on stage, and I agree with her point that the girls talking over each other is annoying. It's hard to hear and no points are really being made. Jason Lee brings Megan out on stage and she looks very cute to me. Her makeup looks nice and so does her dress. However, her answers were very boring. Jason asked her a question and she just kept saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Janelle thinks that Sydney's beef with Judy was fake because they slept in the same bed the night that Judy spit at her. Though Judy and Sydney said that they didn't sleep in the same bed, they were just in the same room that night. And Judy says that when the cameras came around, Sydney acted fake towards her and she was nice when there was none around. Jason talks to Christina and tells her that he loves how patient she's been at the reunion, and Sydney interrupts as usual. The whole start talking to Christina and Natalie about their beef. Christina says that Natalie doesn't own anybody and that she thinks that Natalie's nasty and rude and she doesn't play that. And she couldn't take it anymore. Christina says that she did what she did and she'll do it again, referring to her hitting Natalie. And Natalie was just kind of sitting on the couch looking in the air confused like she didn't know what was going on. Christina says that Natalie should have pulled to the side if she felt that she was truly wrong because they were friendly with each other, but instead Natalie was yelling down the hall about Christina on the phone, so she didn't like Natalie's demeanor, so it set Christina off and that's why they ended up getting into a fight. Tamar shows a receipt of Natalie talking about Christina not too long ago and says, what's this about Natalie? And Natalie said that she has no problem with Christina and she has no problem being the bad guy. Of course, instead of Natalie just owning up for what she did wrong, she deflects and starts talking about Christina's life. They talked about Christina live, saying that Janelle and Natalie be selling their kitty cat. She says that Natalie's ugly, has a big forehead, but Natalie says that Christina talked about her child in that same live. Natalie gets mad and says that she's gonna walk out and hold production up, and Natalie just starts running her mouth like she always does, saying that she has a billionaire kitty cat, which let's come back down to reality because Natalie is not a billionaire. She starts calling Christina broke, etc., but she didn't have any of this energy on stage. Tamar seems really confused about the allegations that Natalie is selling her kitty cat, and she asks Christina where she got it from, and Christina says that it's Googleable and that everyone pretty much knows. Natalie comes back inside mad and says that Christina talked about Journey. They finally played the clip and Journey was actually mentioned, but she never really spoke about Journey in my opinion. All that Christina said was that Journey's not gonna have anything to look up to if Natalie keeps going the route that she's going. Christina and Natalie start arguing because Natalie said regardless, Journey was still mentioned and she doesn't feel like it was right. Christina says how is Natalie gonna get mad at her when she was bringing up Seven's baby's name 6 in Sarah's leaked audio. Christina says that she said what she said and that she stands on it, and Natalie actually sits down before Christina does. I personally think that Natalie was intimidated by Christina, especially when Christina was standing up yelling. Natalie looked like she didn't really want any parts of that. Natalie asked Tamar to give Christina the same energy, and Christina said the difference between Natalie and her is that she can give a real apology whereas Natalie cannot. Christina said that she will admit that she did cross a boundary and she did take it a bit far. Christina gets really close to Natalie and says that she sincerely apologizes and that she doesn't mess with Natalie, but that's a boundary that she won't cross in the future even if they do end up beefing. Talking about the fake emails again, Tanisha said the first tracking tracked it back to the Bay, which is why she thought it was Natalie and went so hard on Natalie, but the second tracking they did for the IP address went back to Virginia. So Tanisha says she doesn't know what to believe, but what she does know is that Natalie never really loves her and that Natalie doesn't really mess with her like that and she's over it. Jason asks why Judy feels as if Judy is on Natalie and Tanisha's level, because in part 1 of the reunion, Judy did say that she was the Bad Girls Club. Jason to me was being very messy and he clearly had some type of animosity towards Judy, and maybe it's because he's friends with Natalie and Natalie for some reason hates Judy's guts. But I thought it was kind of weird how every question he directed towards Judy, he was being a little messy. Jason asked Megan who's the fakest, and Megan says that from what she's seen that everyone is being pretty fake and that people at the reunion aren't expressing their true emotions. Megan said that she wished people would say what they actually have to say because the reunion is getting boring. Jason said that he feels like he's sitting at the View, and Tamar disagrees and says that there's a misconception that black women have to be together and start fighting, and that that's not entertainment and that black women can sit down and talk out their issues. Megan slides in there a little bit and interrupts Tamar and says that she agrees, but that people should still say how they feel though. Tamar continues over Megan speaking and says that Christina and Natalie demonstrated real womanhood by talking out their issues. Megan must have really got to Tamar because Tamar brought up a comment that Megan had made calling the reunion boring, and brought it back up a couple minutes later and talked about how just because people aren't busting each other up in the heads doesn't make it boring. Tamar is yelling over Megan and Megan still talks while Tamar is yelling into her mic, and Megan says that she never said anybody should be fighting, she just said that people should speak how they truly feel. And then Tamar starts talking about black women, bringing them together and that they should show them being businesswomen, mothers, etc. While Tamar's getting up and saying that people don't need to be fighting, Sydney gets up and said that she begs to differ because she was gonna bust Judy's and then halfway through standing up and walking towards Judy's side, she walks back to her chair and says that she was just kidding and laughed. Tamar got very upset and actually ended up walking off stage. In the midst of this, Natalie's passing her posh over to Megan, and Judy called Natalie fake because when she asked Natalie to hit her pen, Natalie had said no, but when Megan asked, Natalie said yes. Judy said that she feels like Natalie hates her and that Natalie always tries to belittle and embarrass her. Natalie said that she feels as if Judy is a lot to deal with and that she's not trying to tear her down or anything, but Natalie is saying that she's not trying to do these things, all while yelling and screaming in Judy's face. Judy says that the scene that really stuck out to her was when Tanisha pulled Natalie aside and was telling her that they have to look out for Judy because she has anxiety and that she doesn't have her parents anymore. So Tanisha was feeling like they should put Judy in her separate room just to accommodate her some more. Judy tears up while talking about the scene and says that Natalie wasn't going to make any more excuses for her. Natalie says that she never said that, and Tanisha interrupted her and says that she did say that, but Tanisha doesn't think that Natalie meant it in the way, it just came off kind of cold. Moments later, Natalie starts standing over Judy, screaming that Judy's mom and dad had died and she sent flowers to her effing house, and Judy tells her not to mention her mom or her dad. Natalie's super hype in Judy's face, yelling, and Judy's trying to tell her to relax, as well as Tanisha. Natalie said that Judy plays victim and that nobody sent her ish, and that Natalie and her mom both sent unlimited ish to Judy's house. Seven speaks up and says that why is she in Judy's face when she knows that Judy isn't going to get super crazy or anything like that back. Natalie responds to Seven and says that she's tired of being lied on. Seven says that nobody's making Natalie to be the bad guy. She says that all the girls have character flaws, but Natalie's pretty much just outshine everybody else's. Judy is trying to talk, but while talking about her parents, she tears up and starts crying, and Tanisha gets up to comfort her. Natalie says she thought Judy and Sydney were friends, so that's why she put them together. And Sydney reveals that she didn't talk to Judy for over 2 years before the show, to which Judy says that they talked right before the show and were excited to do it together. Jason is trying to ask Christina and Seven a question, and Judy's having a side conversation with Natalie. So Jason stops and says that he can't respect Judy because she's flip-flopping, when she had just said that Natalie didn't respect her dead mother. Judy says that she's about to disrespect Jason, and that Jason said that how is she going to turn up on him, but nobody who actually had a problem with her on the show. Once again, Judy turns to being problematic and she misgenders Sydney, when she knows that Sydney identifies as a woman and is female presenting. Judy on purposely misgenders her, which is transphobic. Judy and Sydney go back and forth again. Judy says that she does consider Sydney a woman and that she calls her her, which is not really true because during the entirety of the show, Judy has continuously misgendered Sydney, calling her bro, guy, etc., when she knows good and well that Sydney identifies as a woman and is woman presenting. Judy says that she made these comments about Sydney just because she was hurt. Tanisha then tries to talk and Jason hears her wrong and asks her to repeat, and Judy says you're fired to Jason, which that Jason often said that whoever put Judy in her dress is fired. Which I thought Judy's response to that was interesting because after Jason said whoever put her in the dress should be fired, she responds with I'm a woman. I don't know what she even means by that. We all know Judy's a woman, we all know she's a lady, but why does Judy always cower away from questions or conversations by saying things that aren't relevant to the topic? For example, they'll talk about Sydney being trans and then Judy was to come in with talking about protecting black women. But I'm not sure if Judy realizes that both things can be true at the same time. But at the same time, you can also protect trans women and men. No one movement needs to be louder or stronger than the other. You're allowed to support both. Tamar comes back on stage, and to me, she doesn't really add anything. She could have just stayed off and I wouldn't really have cared. Now it's the end of the reunion and each girl gets to say how they feel at the end of the show. Janelle says that she wanted to address Christina and their issues because she felt as if Christina was upset about comments that were made on the show, but she would have appreciated it if Christina would have sent her a message or a text saying that she was hurt and they could have dealt with it that way. Christina says that she feels as if Janelle is trying to make it seem as if Christina came at her for no reason, but she sees Janelle is trying to end it, so she will leave it at that, but she said that she doesn't care about Janelle as a person. She just doesn't want Janelle to try to end it at the reunion, then the next day go back on Instagram talking her mess. Judy actually apologized to Sydney for calling her a man and says that she thinks that Judy is a beautiful trans woman and that she was just hurt, so she tried to hurt Sydney. I really did like Judy's apology and I felt that she was being sincere, and you can tell them fighting made her very emotional. They got up and hugged each other and said that they had love for each other. Tanisha speaks about the project as a whole and says that she was disappointed and that it was a show. She said it was a tough job but she had fun doing it, but there was just a lot of mixed emotions. She was not used to the backlash from the fans because for a long time she was a very respected name, and everybody always had love for Tanisha. Surprisingly, Natalie actually thanks the girls for being part of the show and talks to Christina and says that she trusted Christina to help her in any way and says that Christina helped with the project as a whole. Natalie says that she respects Megan, and she also talks to Judy and says that when Judy says that Natalie doesn't care for her, it does upset her because she truly does love Judy. Judy says I love you to Natalie, and Natalie says it back, but Natalie sounded like very forced and fake to me. I don't know, that's just my opinion. And the show pretty much just comes to a close. But I do have to say that Tamar was a huge letdown as a reunion host. Yes, I don't like Jason. He was being very messy at the reunion, but at least he was professional enough to stay in his seat and ask the questions that he needed to ask, and didn't let the girls get him to the point where he's running off stage acting dramatic. I don't know, I guess I was just excited to see Tamar at the reunion, so this was just a letdown for me. But I do agree with Megan's point in that the girls were not being honest with how they feel, and that I kind of just felt like they were sugarcoating stuff because they didn't really want to get into the topics, or that they knew that they were going to end up fighting. Part 2 is definitely better than part 1, but it wasn't all that great. If you guys watched it, let me know what you guys think down below. If you didn't watch it, be sure to give this video a like. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. See you in the next one. Bye.